Well, the hour being 1 o'clock, we'll call this regular council meeting of council this 14th day of September 2020 to order. We have an agenda before us, or if there are any additions or deletions? No, nothing? Would someone like to move we adopt this agenda?
I'll move that we adopt that agenda.
Thank
Your
you,
worship.
Councillor Bates. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is a public hearing, and I'll quickly, just for the benefit of the people here today, the order of the public hearing is at first the introduction of the bylaw by administration, and then a call to hear from anyone in support of the bylaw, and then a call from anyone opposed to the bylaw. And then the administration will have a chance then to summarize if they've got any more comments, and council will consider any questions at that time before closing. So I will hereby declare the public hearing related to bylaw 1470-A69 to order, and ask administration for their introduction.
So bylaw 1470A69 is a land use bylaw amendment to redesignate 4002 49th Avenue from the residential medium density R2 district to the residential transition RT district, and to include contractor service minor as a discretionary use within the RT district. The amendment is being requested by a potential purchaser of the property to allow for the use of the parcel for primarily commercial purposes. This property is designated R2 medium density in the land use bylaw and indicated for residential use in the MDP. The R2 district provides for duplexes and single family as permitted uses, with a range of uses including adult care, bed and breakfast, childcare, group homes, and row housing as discretionary uses. The residential transition district is stated in the land use bylaw as being intended to support the incremental redevelopment of areas between adjacent commercial corridors and the greater residential areas of town. The uses should buffer residential uses from the commercial core by minimizing traffic, parking, lighting, and hours of operation for the commercial operations. And to enhance compatibility with the surrounding residential, development is encouraged to utilize existing buildings. And within that district, the Development Authority may consider a combination of uses on a single parcel. The residential transition district provides for duplexes, single family, secondary suites, offices, and personal services as permitted uses, and a range of uses including business support services, arts and crafts studios, retail sales, restaurants, health services, group homes, adult care, bed and breakfasts, and mixed uses as discretionary uses. The RT district prohibits open outdoor storage. In addition, contractor services minor is defined as a development used in the delivery and support of construction-related activities. Typical uses include, but are not limited to, building construction, surveying, electrical, heating, plumbing, or similar services of a construction nature which do not require outdoor on-site storage or space for materials. So the subject parcel is surrounded by R2 residential, consisting of single-family duplexes, small apartment, and a church to the north. Residential R1B, consisting of single-family homes to the southwest, and highway commercial, the Bluebird Motel, directly to the east and south. Motel doors exit directly across the alley from this property. So the property currently consists of a large single-family home with extensive garage space, including a double front attached garage and additional attached space accessing off the side lane. The dwelling is quite unique in its size and surrounding uses. The home has been used for home occupations in the past related to the restoration of vehicles and service. So the current application addresses only zoning, and concerns and conditions directly related to various use operations would need to be addressed at development permit stage. So I'll just leave it there for now. we'll carry on after the people have a chance to speak, I guess.
Okay, is there anyone here today that would like to speak in favor or in support of this bylaw? Come on up. If you'd just announce your name and.
Okay. Tyrell Robinson. We live at 5244 38th Street Crescent. We actually put in the application for this rezoning. I just want to thank council and the town for letting us speak here today. We've been residents of Innisfail for the past 10 years. We've kind of chosen to settle down and raise our family here. And since making this decision 3 years ago to start a small business, we purchased Cornerstone Flooring. We've kind of expanded its offerings since then and are looking to better the community and kind of expand our offerings. So as the application shows prior that you guys Megan went through, this property is flanked on two sides by the Bluebird, which is zoned highway commercial. So on that side of town, with the zoning the way it is, there's I don't see any future plans or ability to expand on that commercial. So to me, rezoning this is kind of providing that buffer for the RT and the residential. I mean, you could leave this as residential and it may sell, it may not, it may continue to depreciate and become another problem. But for us, we kind of would like to work with the community and the town to kind of buffer the residential with the RT. We've got our development permit kind of ready to go if this is approved, and we would be, I guess our operations, a little bit about it would be, it's kind of a 9 to 5 operation, Monday to Saturday. There'd be zero additional noise that you wouldn't get regular residential noise. I think other than I put in our thing as our forklift once a day at most. We have to drive the forklift out and pick up materials from deliveries, which this property we'd be picking them up right off 59th Ave. And other than that, we have one, maybe two customers at a time, kind of spread out throughout the week. So I know I had kind of looked through the agenda here and there were some concerns about it raised from a resident. I just wanted to speak a little bit to that, is that like I said, there would be some additional traffic with nothing more than residential, being that we'd have one or two customers at a time at the property. We're kind of moving a little more away from the retail space to more of the show home, kind of bring people in and consult with them on materials that they're looking for. So it's not, you don't walk in, pick something out and buy it right there and walk out with it as a true retail location would, right? It's more consultative. We have samples to show them and things like that. So there would be some additional, I guess, potential vehicle traffic through the neighborhood coming to the property, but I wouldn't say that would be more than normal residents. If you have friends over for coffee or something, you have one or two vehicles showing up on every other day or whatever it is. I know there was some concerns that this is allowing the commercial to encroach into the residential area, where I feel like the highway commercial is in that neighborhood. It's right there. This zoning RT is allowing it to remain looking residential. We're not putting up a 3-story building or anything commercial. It's staying, it looks like a house with the shop that it's already there. We're working with the buildings there, and we're actually going to hoping to improve the curb appeal of the property. And I think, oh, there was some parking on the street concerns, vehicle doors closing and opening and vehicles coming and going. And like I said, we don't have a whole lot of customers in a day. We may have 1 or 2 a day type of thing, so it's very minimal. And the only thing that would be out of the ordinary of the way traffic travels today is we would potentially have that delivery truck coming in once a day, which usually around noon. They come in and then we offload materials, so. Is any questions at this point?
Your worship, may I ask Tyrell a question? Just with the mode of delivery, is that a cube van that comes in or semi or?
It depends. Our trucking company travels every day to Calgary and back. Depending on the load that they either have a tandem axle truck or they have a semi with a trailer.
So how do you foresee them delivering? Are they coming into the alley or down 49th or?
I foresee like the alley would be too narrow for them to come down. I foresee them kind of coming from Petrocan down 49th, parking in front of the property where we can pull out the alley on the forklift, grab our stuff, and then back into the warehouse.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you,
Councillor
Your Worship. Through to Tyrell, you had mentioned in your presentation about expanding your offerings. What do you mean by that?
Since we've bought Cornerstone flooring, when we purchased it was strictly flooring. We now offer full renovation services. We actually sell kitchen cabinets, countertops, and that out of the store, as well as we do complete renovations, home improvements, interior, exterior, that type of thing.
There would be materials stored for your renovations on site, or?
Majority of materials that we have are the flooring that comes in. Everything else is pretty much shipped direct to site.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Your worship, through the Tara, what about signage? What do you plan to do for that?
I've been talking with Megan on signage, and through the development permit, we would be applying for signage. I'm not sure what that would look like. I know we're putting in the development permit kind of to stay within the existing bylaws around that. We would want some sort of sign on the house. I think there's size limitations of 15 square feet or something like that, whether it's freestanding or hanging on the house, just so we can identify, you know, on Google and that we would give our address, but when somebody pulls up, we'd want something kind of just saying Cornerstone.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, this time we think you might be able to
Okay.
get away. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak in favor? Okay, if not, then I'll ask the question then if there's anyone here that would want to speak in opposition to this bylaw consideration. Yes, come on up. Just give us your name and
Yeah,
address.
Larry McDermott. I live at 4007 49 Ave, and it's across from the property. We gave some paperwork out. It might be a little extensive, but we just feel that it would open the door for who knows what down the road. It sounds reasonable for now, but it could be sold and changed into who knows what. It's just our worry. So we'd rather not have it. That's what we feel like. So that's about it. I don't.
Okay, I
just-
think just as clarification, if I might ask Megan to clarify to Mr. McDermott, the potential with this new zoning will that have much bearing on the concerns for the local residents?
I guess the primary or change between the R2 district and the RT district is that expanded commercial component and the ability to have basically a freestanding commercial use. Where in a residential district, typically you can only have a home occupation sort of in accessory to your house itself. So that's the sort of big difference between the two. But again, that RT district does attempt to encourage buildings to utilize existing spaces, so the character and the activity is still what should be acceptable within a residential neighborhood, as opposed to a full-on commercial venture. I guess, again, this one's tough when we have the applicant applying and we start talking sort of about development permit things ahead of the zoning itself, because a lot of those things like signage and hours of operation and numbers of deliveries a day will all come with those conditions of the development permit approval that MPC would get to look at in a little more detail, where the decision today, changes that zoning and does open up those various opportunities that are within the RT district.
With the RT district then, Megan, would it, specific questionable or marginal use of the property in the future would require a process to go to MPC, and first of all, if it was acceptable, and then if it, I'm not quite sure how that would work, but I think that what Mr. McDermott's concerned about, what's happening, what's the potential in the future.
Correct. So
what
even
sort
for
of-
this application, yes, that it will still have to come forward for MPC as a discretionary use. And then in the long term, in the future, the only permitted uses within the RT district are a detached dwelling, a duplex, home occupations, a secondary suite, and then office and personal services are the other permitted uses in there. So those would be the only types of uses that would be approved without another sort of public process through MPC.
Well, there's certainly, I mean, any changes in the future of the use would certainly be subject to municipal planning controls and that sort of thing, but,
I just, I don't understand why they wouldn't live there. Like, there's a residence there. Like, it says the potential buyer wouldn't live there.
well, well, it is what it is, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure what, their exact, I think, Tyrol has indicated what their initial intentions are, but, it's basically residential attached with a large garage with,
Yeah. But then do they get renters in and all that, that's
Yeah.
just what we're wondering.
yeah.
It could, that's all, we're
Any house
just
can be
worried.
rented, I guess,
yeah.
I can clarify just a little bit. I think at this point, the intent is that the main floor of that house would become the showroom and office
Yeah.
space for their business. So it would stay largely like a house, but they would be utilizing it to have people come
Yeah.
in and look at samples or different types of options for their projects.
Your worship,
Yes.
through to Larry, I mean, we do allow home occupant businesses, and can you specify a little more what, with this particular business as it's going in today, like, I do get your concerns of how it could evolve, but that does have to go through MPC, et cetera, but do you have particular concerns right now with this business?
No, it sounds, it sounds
okay.
reasonable to that point, but we've never had any luck with the previous businesses being respectful or.
Yeah, from
At
what I
all.
understand, there's
I
always
mean,
been.
I don't know who these people are, it's just a concern. A big
Right,
one.
and I understand that, and perhaps one of the concerns may be, and I know when we first started talking about this, that the trucks would actually go down that back alley, not in front. So that is a little bit of a concern for
Traffic, yeah.
myself. I do know, from past experience that it is only maximum one truck a day. But, yeah, that may be a concern. I'm just trying to get to where if your concerns are now, or what may become.
Both, yes. It's just, like I said, businesses come and go, and
Yeah.
they don't always stay there, and then it becomes something else.
Yeah, and I do understand your concerns from previous, that there, plenty of vehicles parked around there, et cetera. I can only imagine that that's not the intent of this particular business, but that it's more, as Megan said, the showroom, being in the business, they want to create a showroom inside, so it's very, very limited to outside exposure. But thanks.
Okay, yeah.
Any other questions?
Just one, Your Worship, through Larry. It does indicate here that we did have complaints in the past on the previous businesses. As a resident adjacent, did you find that those complaints were responded to appropriately, or?
Not usually.
Not usually, like,
I
Like
mean, I don't know if we were the only one, and to be honest with you, it's no fun complaining about a neighbor, no matter who, right?
right,
It's not a good feeling.
right.
But they would, I assume they were talked to, and they had these the bylaw was set up, and this is what they weren't allowed to do, and it just didn't happen. It just didn't. So of course, the newest person, I'm not blaming anybody here, it's just from the past, it was unsettling, the two businesses there.
Yes, Your Worship. Just some of the concerns, obviously, if there was any, there's obviously the guidelines and hours of operation, and we go through all these, and I'm kind of, obviously sorry that your past experience wasn't ideal, but I do feel that going forward with proper lines of communication and having the proper, timelines put in place, and it all being above board, I definitely think that when we do a redesignation of a zoning, they're set in stone, like that's the way it's supposed to be. And by all means, applicant, whether now or later, is going to be subject to those rules. So I understand that, a bad experience is a bad experience, but I have faith going forward that that won't be the case. And if there is any discrepancies, the rules will be enforced as they should be. So that's how I feel. We all can agree that there's been things that happened in the past that might not be ideal, but we do have to move forward and really put our efforts into that. So.
Okay. I get that, I'm just not sure how to word it, sort of. It's kind of like, is that what you would want next to you? It's kind of like, you don't, we chose to live there, I realize that, and it's changed over the years, but it's not something that's appealing, sort of. It's already been changed to a business, I understand that, but just like I said, more concerns down the road, that is one of our concerns, for sure.
Okay, well, I think we have a pretty good idea of your situation too, Mr. McDermott, and we will take this to a point of debate here shortly back in the council, so
Okay.
you're welcome to stay and listen to the arguments and.
Your worship, I just had one more if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Through to Larry, and perhaps through to Megan, as far as what was before, we understand it was a mechanic shop, right? And that created some of the problems that I understand, and I look at things as, if it was my neighbor, yes, what would I do, what would I want? And the concerns before were all the extra vehicles, et cetera, parking. So I guess one of my questions is was it designated a business prior to this, or was he actually operating illegally?
No, so there was actually an original home occupation permit, back when it was antique vehicle restoration was the original
Right.
permit. And then within the 2-3 years, there was another home occupation permit, and I believe it was issued for a 2-year term because we had some of these concerns already about some of the noise and the, random vehicles parked around, some of the outdoor storage, those types of concerns. And when that permit actually came up at the end of the 2-year term and we started kind of picking around at some of the conditions, that was when that resident moved on.
Yeah. So just further to that, I'd like, definitely concerns with mechanics and that many vehicles around the shop, whatnot. I'm very confident that that's not going to be the case with this particular business. Moving forward, again, like we talked about, it has to go through MPC and those things have to be approved. So we kind of have to look at it how it is
Oh, yeah.
right now.
I understand.
Your worship, through to Megan. Megan, can you maybe speak a little bit as to, if there were issues, what kind of solutions there are that could be looked at, just to maybe help Larry, maybe put him at ease? And
Sure, I guess I can go through a little bit more of just out of the bylaw. So again, this bylaw does create the opportunity for expanded commercial use, for which then the development authority, which would be MPC, would be required to evaluate proposals prior to a permit being issued. The land use bylaw provides the opportunity for the development authority to consider any potential impacts associated with a specific application and to enforce conditions to limit those impacts. These may include parking, hours of operation, numbers of patrons on site, attenuation and mitigation of noise or other nuisances, signage, lighting, those sorts of things. In addition, the town's nuisance bylaw requires that no property owner shall allow for exhaust dust or airborne matter likely to disturb another person to escape their premises. And then the town's community standards bylaw also requires that no person shall cause or permit any noise that annoys or disturbs the peace of any other person. And the bylaw officer has the discretion to determine what constitutes noise based on the type, volume, and duration of the sound, time of day, and nature of the surroundings. So even beyond the conditions that MPC could impose, there are those general noise and nuisance bylaws that are enforceable on any property.
so, Your worship, through to Megan, let's give an example. Let's say we're supposed to have deliveries at midday, and deliveries start to come at 7 a.m. for whatever reason. In a semi-trailer, we've got air brakes and doors and forklifts. Like, what would be a type of penalty that would be imposed, or like would someone go speak with Cornerstone, say this isn't working, this is not what we agreed to?
So typically that would probably be the approach to start with if it's and then through the community standards bylaw, there is the ability to ticket those things. And then if it extended beyond that deterring, then there is the land use bylaw. If you're not in alignment with your conditions, there is the potential to issue a stop order, which is basically revoking your permit to operate at that location.
So does that help, Larry? Does that make you feel somewhat better? I know in the past maybe things weren't looked at for whatever reason. I don't know why that would be, but
Yeah,
You know, and I understand what you're
sounds
saying. It's
reasonable
difficult
now,
to
that's for sure.
complain,
That's for sure.
right? It's very difficult to rat out a neighbor without question like that,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, I think we've got a clear enough picture
Yeah.
from the parties involved. Maybe, Tyrol, did you want any rebuttal opportunity?
No, I think, the council might be interested in the difference between, talk loud enough. Oh. Sorry, I think the council might be interested in what Mr. McDermott's probably talking about is the difference, the different permitted uses between R2 and RT. So Megan read the permitted uses for RT, which is what we'd like to make it to, the differences I think were the commercial, like a retail store, and there was one other one I think that was offices, where RT doesn't allow those as permitted or discretionary necessarily. But if you look at R2, those are the only two that would really make a difference between the RT and the R2 that are permitted. Everything else would have to be through a public hearing process. So I mean, I don't know if that makes Mr. McDermott feel any better, but like offices and retail are permitted uses under the RT, which
Not
could be the concern.
Okay. All right, well, I think we've had our opportunities to, for and against, and I guess if there's no further discussion, I will look for a motion to close this public hearing. Okay, thank you, Councillor Carrot. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And I think I was kind of approached by the staff to, if we would consider continuing on with the 6.1, which is the application for rezoning of this property for discussion and consideration. So 6.1, Megan, would you like to?
Sure, so I think we've covered a fair bit of the report. I will just highlight, should have said this previous, that again, the notice for the public hearing was advertised on the town's website as well as in the Albertan, with direct notifications being sent to all adjacent property owners, with the one written submission that is included in your package from Mr. McDermott, citing concerns of incompatibility, lack of past enforcement, nuisance or enforcement, and traffic noise and parking. So just to kind of recap the report a bit. So the primary aim of the land use bylaw is to ensure the appropriate separation of incompatible uses and to ensure that development does not unduly interfere with the amenities of a neighborhood or materially interfere or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring properties of land. So the introduction of more commercial uses into a residential area can produce some potential incompatibilities between properties. This property being located right at the boundary of existing commercial and residential areas, that the RT district is intended to buffer and soften that transition. Again, I think it is somewhat a unique property in that being directly adjacent to the highway commercial of the Bluebird makes it a bit of a challenge as a straight up residential use. So whether this offers a bit of a way to lead into the residential neighborhood. Commercial uses typically generate more traffic than residential uses. The property is on 49th Avenue, which is a north-south collector through the town, and sees traffic accessing Petro-Canada as well as south onto 42nd. The expectation is that collector roads do accommodate traffic through the area, not just local traffic. So there's that. Parking, the site currently does have a fair amount of on-site parking. Again, without this being the development permit application at this time, it's tough to specifically break that down, but there is a fair amount of space on the site already developed for parking off-street. Landscaping and aesthetics, the RT district has landscaping requirements similar to all residential areas, and this yard does have numerous mature trees and substantial hedging and fencing between adjacent properties. Mixed use and redevelopment, so mixed use refers to the combination of two or more uses in a single building to create more vibrant spaces. Mixed use often provides opportunity to reuse existing buildings that match the visual character of the neighborhood while allowing for additional uses. Redevelopment and investment in the existing neighborhood on an incremental basis minimizes risk of incompatibilities and allows change to occur more slowly over time. Mixed-use development is sensitive to residential character and have been identified as a mechanism to make older neighborhoods more sustainable and productive. So currently, administration is recommending approval of this bylaw. The feeling being that the RT district is still a primarily residential district. The expectations of the commercial operator in that district would still be different from a straight-up commercial district, and that there is suitable ability by the development authority to limit the types of activities on the site, as well as the other community bylaws that we mentioned, the community standards and nuisance bylaws, to help ensure that any operation is still suitable for what would be acceptable in a residential neighborhood.
Thank you, Megan. I guess in order to carry on with discussion purposes, is someone prepared to make a motion to approve of giving this second reading of this bylaw?
Your worship, I would so move second reading of bylaws 1470-A69.
Thank you. Discussion. Councilor Reberger.
So, having looked at this and thought about it quite a bit, the RT zoning to me doesn't seem suitable because I don't think this neighborhood is in transition. I think the alley is a natural break between the highway commercial and the residential. I don't think I have really any objection to the type of business that's proposing to go here. I'm just uncomfortable with using this zoning for this particular item. It almost seems like the same could almost be achieved through a home occupation. To me, I'm not sure if he could get Tyrell to get quite what he's looking for, but I'm just a little uncomfortable taking it away from residential use. And to me, it's almost like an encroachment onto the residential, where I think the RT was designed as a transition for the central business district to residential. Now we're stretching it out into the highway commercial into residential. So I don't think this is the right zoning. That's my opinion. And I have full faith in the MPC and the conditions we could improve, put on it and all those types of things, but I just don't feel this zoning, to me, just doesn't feel right.
Well, Councilor Reberger, what do you think would be a better alternative zoning?
Well, I think the R2 that it is now is the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, it is kind of a unique property, and I could foresee another home occupation going in there, making use of all those. I mean, it's a reason it was built that way, right? That was what the person had in mind, was a home occupation type thing. So yeah, I'm uncomfortable with using that RT for this property. I just doesn't seem right to me.
Just as clarification, Megan, and the difference between the R2 and the RT, it would be required as a resident, whereas the RT it's not. Is that correct?
Correct. In the RT, you can have essentially properties that have a standalone commercial use on them. The home occupation doesn't work unless you intend to live on the site. So that's
Yeah.
sort of how that doesn't work in this situation for the intent of the applicant.
Okay, any,
Your worship, I guess I'll just say I've thought about this a lot as well. I'm kind of all over the map with it. On one hand, we've listened to 13 ways the last few months, and at some point Innisfail has to get a little more deliberate in their planning. On the other hand, we've also learned how much retail is changing. Well, businesses don't necessarily need a large showroom anymore to do their business, and I think, having had some interaction with Tyrell through the chamber and stuff, I think he's a very good corporate citizen, and MPC can put things in place. I do have some concerns, like Councillor Rehberger, kind of transitioning this area where it's really not in the area structure plan to transition this area, and yet, that house sits there, and when you look behind it, you've got the Bluebird and, the highway commercial zoning, and probably cutting off that house is not a big deal. My biggest concern is the traffic. I think the semi-trailers coming in with delivery and where they're going and how many times and what time of day and that kind of thing. But, I'm hoping that could maybe be worked out through the Municipal Planning Commission and go from there. I also understand what Larry's saying. I don't know that I would want something like this next door to me either. So it's not easy figuring this one out, but those are just some of my thoughts.
Yes,
Councillor
Mayor, I
Carey.
mean, I too share, well, it's very difficult because I agree with both councillors' remarks there, and have those same concerns as Councillor Reber has, because where do we draw the line, where do we go? But again, as Councillor Barkley said, that it's right next to commercial. One question I have is, if changed to RT, is that just that particular property, or does it extend beyond that?
No, just that property itself.
Just that property. And then I guess the next question is, because as it was brought forth the first time, I do recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tyrell, that you had talked about having the trucks in that back alley. Would that be an MPC restriction? And one question. Second question, can that be obtained if this was to move forward?
You mean having the trucks come up the alley as
Only in the
opposed to
alley
coming
rather
up
than the front of the
49th?
street, yeah.
I guess MPC can specify how they would like to see those deliveries. Whether the street is more of an impact versus the alley, that would be consideration
That's what I was trying to get
for
from
them
you.
as well. You can go up to the microphone too.
Yeah, I guess that would be in the development permit. I was thinking the alley would be more detrimental to the neighbors than the avenue, than 49th Ave, just because if the truck's sitting there for 30 minutes and that is a long alley running north-south, which services a lot of properties there. So if somebody goes to come out that end and our truck is sitting there, they're basically stuck there for that time. So that was one of my concerns with saying like we'd bring the trucks down the alley, but if that's what the development authority wants, we can definitely look at that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, and that definitely poses another problem, if you will. Is the plan to then, you're gonna have the trucks parked right in front of the place, so you'll keep that area clear when the trucks come in, or so that it's not blocking that street?
Yeah, I was kind of waiting to talk to the development authority on that and see what their thoughts were. My thoughts are either in front of our property, or if you go to the south in front of the Bluebird or whatnot along 49th, there's really nobody parking there,
Like
nothing.
Further up towards,
The south, towards the
used to be
Petro-Canada.
Buster's, but
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's open anymore. Okay.
Worship, are you still
Yes,
taking
Councillor Harrison,
questions?
please. I had
Thank-
my mic shut off. Getting some
okay.
echo there.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I too echo the same concerns as what Councillor Rehberger. I don't see it as a transition district. I see it as a transition lot. And we've had a number of conversations with 13 Ways, and they've cautioned us to be very careful and use caution when we start to have these one-offs, so that we don't get into this kind of hodgepodge planning as we go forth, as we redesign our community. So it's not a district, or I see it as a district, it's a lot. If you look on the map, it's just one lot. And where do we draw the line? You know, maybe down the road, there'll be somebody else that'll want to come and plunk a commercial business in the middle of an R2, and we'll call it a transition. I'm like Councillor Rehberger, I'm not comfortable with this. I have concerns around additional traffic. And yes, MPC can put all the conditions they want on it, but it's the enforcement of. And I know deliveries, you say noon, while the truck breaks down, they're not here till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I don't know how many children are on that street. You're parking on 49th Avenue, unloading a fairly large, at times, big truck, a 53-foot van. So I just don't see this as the appropriate zoning. I do have some concerns about what the contractor, the wording contractor minor in the proposed bylaw, what really that means. I know the other district that you've zoned RT down here along 50th Street doesn't have that in there, and now here we are, one lot, and we're going to make another concession. So I'd just like to caution everyone around this hodgepodge planning, and I have to agree with 13 Ways that we need to take a look at our community overall. And I understand that it's somewhat premature yet because we don't have everything in place, but we need to take a start, and I think this is probably, we're close to coming out with draft concepts. So I think that, at this point in time, I don't know if I can support a second reading of the proposed bylaw.
Councillor Hill.
Yes, Your Worship. So everyone speaking on the 13 Ways and how we've engaged with them. Some of the things that I think is quite unique about this, the offerings of Cornerstone and the renovations, is having that opportunity to go into a home and see the flooring, the crown moldings, everything all tie into one. Going into the existing showroom is very nice, but you're limited because you just got 4 walls. When you can actually see the stuff in place, I think it's I like the concept, I like the idea a lot. With the local traffic and stuff, I agree that's obviously a concern. But the other question I wanted to kind of pose too is when Buster's or that convenience store was operating, how were they getting their deliveries? Like, were they getting them the same way with a big truck? And I'm not sure. I'm just trying to understand how other businesses that are going to be receiving freight were getting their freight on that street and on that area. So I think there's a logistics that could be achieved through that, but it's basically just a glorified home occupation with no one living there. And I guess that's not really a designation or a classification we can throw it into, but I like the idea a lot, and it's just hard when you like you say, when you rezoning is a pretty big deal, and I have a hard time with rezoning when it's tough. That's all.
Councillor Beats.
I do have, it's tough, as everybody said. But that conversation has precipitated another question in my mind through to Megan, I guess. So short of zoning it, is there provision to grant an unusual home occupation with a specific, and then the,
Development authority is limited in what they can vary. You can vary regulations and standards, you know, setback numbers, where things are. You're not allowed to vary definitions. So a home occupation is defined as a, you know, an operation happening in accessory to the people living in the home. So we wouldn't be able to issue a variance within that existing district, which has, you know, sort of led to this this entire process that, yeah, we aren't able to do that.
yeah, okay, that was my question. Yeah, no, I do find it difficult too. I also wonder what the future of this property is. Like, is it just sterile, that it isn't desirable as a residence because of where it is, and it isn't desirable as a, so that makes it tough. And I guess, yeah, I'm not sure.
Mayor Romaine, so,
Yes, Counselor.
again, I share all concerns, and I do agree with some remarks that Councillor Hill made. The way I'm looking at it now is there has been trucks on that road previous. I'm very familiar with the type of business and what goes on in that business, and I do think it's a good idea to be able to demonstrate that business in that manner. But that, to me, that's up to the business itself. The way I want to look at it is, what was there before and was there legally was worse than what's going to be in there now. And what would happen, as Councillor Bates said, with that particular property? Is it going to become dormant? Is it going to be, you know, an eyesore in the future? So right now, I think it's the best thing that can probably happen for that business at this particular time, in my opinion. Or for that place of residence, sorry.
And Your Worship, I think with, you know, respect to the RT discussion, it's not that we're saying if we did this, it's not saying that we're going to transition that whole R2 district into RT. We're looking at this one property, where it's located, what's behind it, what's going in. And I think that needs to kind of be at the forefront too. There is no other designation, right, Megan, that would fit, basically.
So did I. That, yeah, there's not a perfect district. It is a bit of a, I don't know if you call it a stretch. That residential transition was envisioned as, yeah, sort of going from the commercial core, allowing those properties to be able to have some expanded commercial uses while still recognizing that likely our downtown isn't going to expand throughout those properties. It's the best we came up with in terms of looking at this property and specifically what we can do there, how we could accommodate this use. I do think that as a straight up residential property, it will be a very difficult property to sell. Being directly adjacent to the Bluebird certainly wouldn't be the choice location in the community. I guess one thing that we could throw in the mix, if council has concerns about that contractor services minor being a discretionary use in the RT district, that could be limited to this property only, so that it wouldn't be a RT, or contractor services wouldn't be a discretionary use in the entire RT district. It would only be on this this specific lot. The only other real option apart from the transition district would be to go to a direct control district for that specific property and deal with it sort of individually all by itself every time something happens on it.
So,
Councilor Rehberger, did you?
Yep. I got it. So contractor services is defined as, development used in the delivery and support of construction-related activities. Typical uses include, but are not limited to, building construction, surveying, electrical, heating, plumbing, or similar services of a construction nature that do not require outdoor on-site storage, or space for materials.
And that would be, what would be the classification, zoning?
If you went to a direct control district,
Just straight DC?
it would be direct control district number, I don't know, A7 or something.
Yeah.
And then you would specify what the uses are, who the development authority is for that property.
But any change of the use would have to come back to council.
Yeah, it would be similar. The golf course is a direct control district. Discovery Wildlife Park is a direct control district. So,
Councilor Reberger.
Just a question through to Megan. If my memory, I'm not currently serving on MPC, but if Tyrell was to move into that house, would that, the business as he's described it, qualify as a home occupation with 2 or 3 customers a day? Like, it seems like it would.
it would, if you could accommodate space-wise
Yeah,
what he's trying to do.
I don't know if you'd want to have that showroom in your house type thing.
Yeah,
But
I know.
that would be a possibility under that. Like, it doesn't seem like this is a super busy business that wouldn't fit into home occupation.
But you'd have to have.
But you'd have to be in
owner
residence.
occupied,
It's
yeah.
got to be the owner occupied, right?
And that, we have approved home occupations that are similar types of
Okay,
businesses,
then
whether you're
that's
a
what I thought.
plumbing
Okay,
and heating guy and you've got a couple trucks and things stored on site, that kind of thing.
okay, thank you.
Your worship, through to Megan, you must have had a reasoning to bring it forward as RT as opposed to DCD, and just wondering what that is, so.
I guess we have a lot of direct control districts in our bylaw.
You can do just about anything with DC.
And in conversation with Tyrell, we thought that it did somewhat fit that intent where you're utilizing the existing building that's on there. From the outside, essentially, that property shouldn't change. And that it did kind of form maybe a bit of a buffer line between that straight up highway commercial to the balance of the neighborhood.
And that's something that MPC could also add in too, right? That the nature of the exterior of that property doesn't change and remains similar. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, I just want to say that if the only difference between this moving forward is as him being a home occupancy versus what he's doing now is that him living there, I don't see a problem, because if he's living there, there's actually going to be more traffic at night versus he's not going to be there. So it's the same business, he's just not living there. So just another comment.
Okay, personally, I look at it as more as a transitional situation from commercial to residential. There's always someone there on the line that's, affected by both zonings on each side, so sometimes you have to look at transitional situations, but on the other hand, I think if for all parties concerned, maybe CDC is or DC, direct control district, but I don't know, I'm kind of wrestling with it, but I see the argument from both sides. I mean, Mr. Tyrol wants to be a show home, not have to, maybe Friday nights you could stay there or something, Tyrol. But anyways, there has to be, and I think to satisfy the 13 ways thoughts about having these oddball zonings here and there, if you have some direct control areas, maybe that's not a bad idea too. So, yes.
I just wanted to say, everybody kind of mentioned 13 ways and planning the town and how we're gonna go forward, but if you look at this area with the highway commercial, there is no plan really there. You've got R2 and R1B. So you've got Petrocan, you've got the Bluebird, which are highway commercial, you've got DCD, which whatever it used to be is a shell of what it was when we moved to town even, right? So I don't know if it's in the council or the town's plan down the road, but that is a major route along the highway. As when you go out towards the highway, that's where we should be developing commercial lots, is where people can easily get in and off the highway, back on the highway, plus for the residents, right? So that's kind of why when I was talking with Megan before, we decided the RT is because we kind of thought that if this property became RT, you could potentially, at the council's discretion or whatever, eventually transition some of that neighborhood that's on the highway, even though it's duplexes and stuff right now, it could be transitioned to more of a commercial, because when I look around this town, there's not much for commercial opportunity as far as me trying to buy a property that kind of fits our need as well as location, right? So.
Okay. Anyways, any further comments? Do we?
So maybe, Your Worship, just to kind of map this out a little bit. So what I'm hearing from council is you want to see this occur, that business, that's kind of what I'm picking up from council. You have a motion on the table to go into second reading of RT, and you're debating whether that's the right zoning to allow that business to occur.
Yeah.
So you have so many angles to this. One is, as per the delegate, to the applicant, is what is the vision? Does RT fit on that property? I know you focus in on the business, what you want to make happen, but is RT appropriate, or is it direct control? Or is it something different? So right now, maybe you should talk about that. Is, do you have a motion on the table? Does RT work, or do you want it to go into direct control? If you go into direct control, then to thoroughly be, I guess, open to the public, you're starting over through the public involvement, notification, public hearing as well. So just, there's a few things, and not to have that as a deterrence of time. Don't use that as we need to do this right now, because if you want to change to something else, you're going to start over. RT, does it fit to what your vision is, as per Tyrell's comments, is what is the vision of the town for highway commercial bleeding into or blending into other zones in that area.
And Your Worship, I just to add on to that comment, RT district controlled district, direct controlled district, is I have confidence in Megan's ability that she has chosen RT for specific reasons, and I feel if that's what she thinks fits, then that's probably what fits. So I'd just like to throw that in there.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Councillor Barclay, because, I mean, the RT, any change, serious change or use of that's considered is going to have to come back to us anyways for RT. But I think when you think what's been going on as an automotive restoration business with air tools and impact wrenches going compared to this, what I've seen for years over at the downtown location, there'd be no comparison in the noise or anything like that, but or disruption to the community. But yeah, the RT, the DCD is good for us to keep a handle on something that we don't want to lose control of. But the RT is very, very similar in that aspect, that the use of the property under RT is gonna be very discretionary too, to some extent, but it'd be a shame to have to go back, but, take another 4 to 6 weeks time, in the process here, and, for what purpose? But, Councillor Bates?
I guess one other comment I would have too is that whatever occurred before, hopefully, this administration, this council, the very fact that we have the two parties and they've talked to each other, obviously, or heard each other, I would have a bit more confidence that if there were complaints or there were problems, that they would get addressed. And so I'll just make that comment.
Okay, any further questions, comments? Well, if not, I'll ask the question then. Those in favor of this second reading? Opposed? Motion is carried. Now, can we proceed with third reading? Is anyone prepared to give this third reading at this time?
I'll make a motion that we move bylaw 1470A69 to third reading.
Okay, any discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. All right. We're done with that. Let's move on to the CAO's report.
Actually, Your Worship, we could back up to the minutes. We didn't get through the minutes. It's okay.
Didn't we? No. I'm losing it
all
here. Okay, I need a motion to accept the regular council meeting of August 24th minutes for consideration.
Also move, Your Worship.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Carried. And need someone to move that we adopt the agenda and priorities meeting of September 8th for consideration.
Also move.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Now, are you ready for your report?
Sure, I'm now prepared, Your Worship. So yeah, the report there is for council's consideration. Any questions regarding the report or anything else regarding operations and administration, be happy to answer your questions. Just like to highlight two items. One is on that report, one is not. Just regarding the 13 Ways Economic Development Initiative. Just one item I'm going to be asking staff to dig into a little more detail. That is additional lighting on the Main Street corridor. So really general comment, but I just want you to be aware that I'm going to be directing staff to pull together some information to come back to you at an upcoming meeting. So they're aware of that now. We'll talk about that tomorrow, but so an action item driven by the CAO, it's going to come back to you here in short order, hopefully, on additional lighting opportunities for Main Street. So I don't need a motion right now, and you can consider a proposal to you at a forthcoming council meeting. The other item I failed to mention in my report, just to provide some transparency, is I have initiated a service review. Services can be reviewed. As you know, we have 200 plus services driven through the town through our budget process. And sometimes council may say, let's pick this service and this service, let's do more of a thorough review. Sometimes they'll be driven internally through the CAO or director or manager. In this case, the CAO has a directive to support enforcement services with a service level review, just to support our great staff on ensuring that we're moving that service forward based on council, CAO, management, and the community's expectations. So
It should be a good process, and I'll drive that forward and communicate out the key finding and any improvements to service as we move forward. So I just wanted you to be aware of where some of my time is going to be spent. Other than that, I'll take any of your questions.
No questions? All right, would someone like to move we accept the CAO's report for information?
I so move, your worship.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Carried, thanks. Mr. Becker, the COVID-19 incident command report.
So, Mayor and Council, the report's short, but I'm sure the discussion might take a little bit more time. As Trish comes up to the front, DCC continues to meet every Wednesday, although we did have to cancel last week's meeting due to other conflict in our calendars. Administration like to just engage with council just regarding some of the, some changes, some adjustments to within our services regarding our facilities. As you mentioned, or as I mentioned to you last meeting, the pool has had some adjustment. I'll have Trish talk on due to the experience we've had that we've added additional programming into the aquatic center, which is great. But also I'd like to have Trish maybe just reference some of the work she's been doing regarding LLC, and even talk about internally on some of your adjustments on resourcing to make it work with the current resources that we have. But also the big one would be the arena operations. Trish, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So we'll start with the pool. We had some success early on. The public was doing what we required of them. Social distancing was working well. The social distance lessons were working well. We looked at doing some private lessons without the social distance component, so more of that cohort group. So it was the same child over a period of 2 weeks, and then that instructor was removed from the rotation, and then someone else would jump in and do another set of the personal privatized lessons. So from that, we've gained a little bit of steam and have opened it up to more aquafit, so based on scheduling. So they'll still have to do the call ahead or pre-register, so it won't be show up to the pool, expect to go in. You'll have to be on the list for that, as well as opening up more lesson sets, so doing more of the cohort grouping within the lessons. So that allowing larger number of kids to be at the pool, creating that cohort group for the entirety of the lessons. Again, once that instructor's done with that group, they would move out of rotation and then back in once they've done their isolation. I think that's it for the pool. So for the library learning center, what we're looking at is custodial staff historically have done any and all bookings that also happen at the library learning center and the school. So when we first started with COVID, we increased the cleaning frequency at all of our town facilities. So they're doing a midday clean at 3 of the facilities just based off of either public numbers or staff numbers. So if they have a larger staff number, we increase the cleaning there. That considerably increased the number of hours dedicated just to cleaning. I think it's up and around the 68 of 70 hours have been allocated for staff. So when we start looking at opening up LLC and providing bookings at LLC, each of those bookings is potentially a half hour to an hour for setup and an hour to an hour and a half for takedown pre-COVID. So now with COVID, the cleaning requirements, chairs, tables, kitchen are a little bit different than they were before. So that's going to be a demand on the staff. So potentially looking at if we were to look at bookings out of the LLC in particular without the school, because we don't know what's happening with the school, there might be a request come through for additional resources if the town wants to proceed with those type of bookings. Questions before we go to the arena?
So, Your worship, through to Trish or CEO Becker, you know, certainly with COVID and extra requirements for cleaning and PPE and stuff like that, there are organizations that are charging a fee, a separate line item fee to cover some of that cost? Is that something that could be looked at, or?
I think, Your Worship, Councillor Barclay I think it'd be the desire of the town to take on bookings to fill and make use of those facilities, right? So one thing is, I don't think we're quite there. Maybe Trish, you can help. What are the requirements for that additional service? So we say we may come in is yes, we do need, and what do we need, and that cost. So, and then what does that cost, and how do you put it back? Do you put it back to users, or do you have it subsidized by the taxpayers? So I think as we advance, we can look at those different models. But right now, I think through to Stuart, there is some demand on interest for programming. So I think over the next week or two, we can come back to you on specifically to the LLC that yes, we do need 1, 2 additional, not FTEs, but staff, or how many hours, the cost, and probably the 3 options, how we best pay for that increased service. Trish, do you have any comments to that?
Nope, that's kind of what I was looking for anyways, was just, we don't know what those rentals are gonna look like. You know, if we get kind of the one off the cuff every once in a while, it's manageable with what we have, but if we go back into the pre-COVID, kind of we have a rental every weekend, we've got bookings throughout the week, then the capacity won't be able to manage those additional bookings.
Mayor O'Main through to Trish, can you, in regards to the pool, can you just give me an overview of what it looks like right now? Is public swim open? Just help me out a little bit here.
Yeah, no worries. I did forget that there will be a public swim. I believe it's Fridays and Saturdays, and forgive me because I don't have the schedule in front of me. But I believe there was a Friday night or Friday evening public swim added and a Saturday public swim added. And those will be done the same way as the lane swim and the aquafit, so you'll have to pre-register. It's limited to a certain number of families just so that we can ensure the social distance, but the opportunities are definitely increasing for that public type swim.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, into the arena. The arena opens today. Yay! We have figure skating starting at 4. They go from, I believe it's 4:15 to 5:45, and then minor hockey starting at 6 and going till, I believe, about 9 o'clock. So we've put in some measures in place just to ensure that we're maintaining social distance where we can. 25 chairs are set up in the lobby 6 feet apart. It's not the best situation, but it's a situation that gets people into the building and back participating. So stuck to that 15 minutes before to allow for skates to be put on. The doors to the building will be locked, so there is a sign on the door with a staff phone number, so that if something were to happen and someone needed access into the building, they can reach someone that's in the building at all times. Again, on the reverse side of that, they'll have their rental, and then within 15 minutes, they're asked to leave the building. That's the starting point. That's where we are as of today. Depending on how things proceed, if we get the public's participation, they buy into what we're doing, the staff can manage the level of cleaning, we can move into step 2 of the plan. Step 2 of the plan basically gets people into their cohort groups. So minor hockey would end up with an Adam cohort, a Pee-wee cohort, a U9, a U11, and a U13 cohort, as well as figure skating, and then the men's groups. Once they've established those cohorts, we can look at allowing dressing room use, and once we start allowing dressing room use, we can start allowing spectators. What that's allowing us to do as staff that are operating the facility is to ensure that we can keep up with the cleaning requirements that we need to keep up with. So all of those spaces have to be cleaned before the next group comes through. So minimize them at the beginning. Can we meet the challenge? Yeah, we can meet the challenge. The public's doing what's being asked of them. Let's throw in another challenge and see if we can meet that challenge. Progress through until we eventually have both arenas open and getting as close to that COVID line that we can get to, so.
Do you have any idea, Trish, how long between the transition to, from 1 to 2?
I can throw out best case scenario.
Okay,
And my best case scenario is we pushed off the U5s and U7s until next Saturday, which is the 23rd, I think.
yeah.
At that point, that's where we were looking at moving into dressing rooms, just so that that younger group would be able to have a parent stay in the facility. As it stands right now, there's nobody in the facility other than participants and coaches. So that's kind of my best case scenario, is that by that second Saturday of being open, that we've moved to dressing rooms.
Mayor Romaine, through to Trish, that's was gonna be one of my questions too, is when we're moving forward, because I'm getting fielding a lot of calls and a lot of concerns about, and Brett Kelly from Alberta Hockey has stated that several other towns are moving forward with opening dressing rooms right away, and so I personally want to see that come as soon as possible, and if we need extra, whatever it takes to make that happen, that's a facility that I just believe we need to keep moving forward as quick as possible with. So.
Your worship, through to Trish, when you're inside the facility or when you get to stage 2, are masks required in dressing rooms and where you're in little closer spaces? And
So I did breach that subject with minor hockey, as well as figure skating. And if that's where we want to go with the process, we can. They're both in support of it. So my recommendation at that time would be, if you're not physically on the ice surface or participating, that you would have a mask. What that's going to do is it's going to take away some of that social distance component, where we're not as staff having to police a large group of people that may or may not be a cohort without, enforcing that social distance component.
So just as a note, that's not a Alberta Health recommendation, that's a recommendation coming from you as a manager?
Yes.
Is that, just out of curiosity, will that come to council? Because that's not going to be my recommendation to wear masks anywhere.
My discussion will go through Todd, and then if we feel that it needs to come to council, I believe through Todd it will come to council.
So right now, for the question from Councillor Carrot, so I think 3 distinct entities, Alberta Health Services, Alberta Hockey, Innisfail Minor Hockey, and the other groups, Innisfail Figure Skating. So they have all their own governance, their own requirements and restrictions. And again, based on experience, if we can achieve the distancing piece, that'd be something that we'd come back looking for your blessing based on the need. Right now, we want to give all benefit to the doubt of the users. They'll comply within their own rules that they're establishing, and then the basic rules that Trish has put together. So it's a multi-stakeholder involvement, but we'll consider that based on the experience over the next week or so.
You're referring to Alberta Health, not Alberta Health Services?
Sorry?
Alberta Health, not Alberta Health Services?
Okay, that'll stand corrected.
Thank you.
Your worship, through to Trish, just one question. So when you said the U5, U7s, that you felt you could accommodate cohorts in the dressing room by next weekend, that fit their desires? Is that?
Yeah, so I had a coach with the president of minor hockey prior to kind of making this plan. He had originally had that group starting on the first weekend of opening. The request was that if we can move that back to that second Saturday, that the hope is that by that point we're in the dressing rooms. So it alleviates a little bit of stress on the parents of the younger guys of not being able to actually be physically in the facility.
Trish, what's your view on opening of the red side?
I am proceeding as the booking policy as far as opening the red side. Success of opening the blue and kind of expanding into the cohort grouping and allowing spectators into the building can definitely have an influence on that. But as far as I'm concerned, let's proceed as per the policy. So having ice ready for that second, or the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and then getting the red side going as well.
Additional question. Trish, can you talk about, again, capacity resourcing to make this work?
So what we're looking at right now is we have moved around our schedule a little bit once we look at opening the red side, meaning removing people that were historically on day shift into a night shift role. What that'll do is it'll allow for cleaning on the red side, cleaning on the blue side, as well as someone to operate the piece of equipment. With that being said, there will be a request for an additional resource. That will come from the inability right now to allow people to take time off. If we have someone that's away sick, we have no backfill. If someone takes vacation, we have no backfill. That turns into overtime, and then Heather doesn't like me very much when that happens. We right now have quite a few staff that are up there with vacation time, so up at that 3-4 week mark, so they do carry some time over into the arena. Without having that additional person to cover that vacation time, we're looking at overtime.
Mayor Romaine through to Trish, can you just, is it still called eaglets, or is it whatever?
They're U5s.
Okay, so U5s, eaglets, can you just walk me through how that's gonna look right now for how those little gaffers are gonna get into the arena and the parents and how many parents are allowed? 'Cause
Yep.
that's been a big concern that I've been getting.
Yeah, no, you bet. So that's why we pushed those two younger groups back. We didn't want them coming in without a parent. We know that they look to mom and dad. We know that if they need a bathroom break, they need a bathroom break. You're pulling a coach away from actually being on the ice with the players to running the little junior to the bathroom. So that we pushed it off basically so that we could get those groups into the dressing room. So one parent per child would be allowed in the facility. That parent would be allowed to stay for the duration of the rental because we've established the cohort group. Spectators are allowed, one per participant. They can help with bathroom breaks, crying because they like to cry that they may or may not want to be there. The parents are basically would be allowed there for support.
So just one parent per
One
skater.
parent per, yeah.
Perfect, thank you, that's good.
Hey, Trish. So in talking to minor hockey myself, had the opportunity on the weekend, so there's a couple opportunities for minor hockey. One is to work towards cohort or to become cohort on the respective teams and age groups. The other one is to then go to social distancing as per the provincial restrictions. Confirm that, please.
They can do one of the two. They can either stay as a cohort, they can either stay as a social distanced minor hockey, or they can go to a cohort. It's entirely up to minor hockey. If they decide to stay as a distance group, they will not get access to change rooms. The reasoning behind that is they would still have to social distance in the change rooms. Our change rooms can accommodate 8 or 9 people socially distanced depending on which change room they actually get. So the minor hockey groups that are on the ice tonight have 23 participants and 2 coaches. So right there you're looking at 3 dressing rooms just for 1 ice user. What that does is it taxes the facility hugely, especially when we start looking at opening up the red arena. Because if I have the Atom group coming in from 5 until 6, and then the Pee Wee group coming in from 6:15 until 7:15 on the blue arena, they've taken 6 of the 8 rooms. So we wouldn't have room to accommodate anything on the red. So without pushing, they're smart to go into those cohort groups so that they can get into dressing rooms. It maximizes the operations of the facility and allows us to get those parents into the building.
Mayor, may I just have one more comment? I just hope we're looking outside the box in that, you know, if we need more dressing rooms, can we convert through, barriers or whatever, part of the foyer into different dressing rooms? Can we get ADCO trailers just outside the other dressing rooms to whatever, to me, whatever we need to do to think outside the box to make this happen as a presentation, that let's look at those options as well.
So from an administrative perspective, we want to make sure those facilities are accessible and in operation as we gain experience. We'll make the adjustments from there, and if that's the case, we certainly come back looking for resourcing from council, and how you can pay for that, that'd be up to you guys. I do want to commend Trish for the hard work and establishing a really good relationship with minor hockey executive and working through these plans. And yeah, I just want to make sure publicly Trish has been identified as within her role. It's a very tough job because hockey, more so than figure skating, is a very highly political, important program in all our municipalities in North America.
Yeah.
So good job.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Trish. Okay, is there anything else for the COVID-19 report? That's it? Would someone like to move we accept that report for information?
I'll move that
Okay.
we accept the COVID-19 report.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Council action control plan. Any questions or discussion there?
Mayor Romaine through to CEO Becker, just wondering if we've got a cost on that, BLM rally that occurred. It says September for.
Your worship, the Councillor Carrot, no, very soon. I think the number is there. I've not been in communication with the commanding officer, so thanks for the reminder, and that should come to you in short order.
Okay, well, if there's no further question or discussion on that, on those, that action control, would someone like to move we accept it for information?
I so move.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carrot. All in favor? Carried. 5.4, discussion regarding the AUMA convention resolutions, P1 to 12.
Your worship, through to CAO Becker and EA Vanessa. First, thanks for putting it together in a readable form, not off a computer screen. I like the binder. I've went through the first 12 or 13, and there's been a lot of work and thought put into these resolutions as presented, or will be presented at convention. I don't see anything in here from my point of view that we certainly can't support. I think there's some there that we really need to be supportive of, like fiscal frameworks, integration of nurse practitioners, that kind of thing. So I guess, I don't know where we go to from here. I guess I have a question of how are we going to handle the virtual convention? Are we all going to be able to get in the same room, or are we going to Zoom from home, or have we given that any thought or discussion around that?
So Your worship, Councillor Harrison, what I understand is everybody should have their own computer or their own laptop, and you have your own individual votes on the computer. So I would recommend for AGM or anything else you see value to be in a group. You can certainly book the chambers during that time. It'll be up to you if you want to congregate or not, but we'll make this available for you. And then you can get into any discussions you wish at that time. But for what I know, the AGM is based on your computer, and you can vote individually as you like.
Okay, thank you.
I would be in support of that, if we were to have to book the chambers for that, AGM. 'Cause I do think it'd be a lot more of a, enjoyable experience to do it together.
I see my favorite resolution in the past is proposed by the town of Drayton Valley, 2020.B4. That's the education property tax collection. And they're expanding on the philosophy that it should not be on the municipalities' dime to be collecting education taxes, and so I'm quite in favor of their proposal here. But,
Your worship, has that been advanced before in your illustrious AUMA career?
over the years, it seems to come up every couple of years, and Gary Marr, if he'd been elected instead of
Allison?
prior to Allison.
Stelmach?
Ed Stelmach. Gary Marr was gonna do it if he was elected, but he didn't get elected. But it would probably mean a sales tax or some other form of revenue for the government, but to me, wouldn't be a bad idea, but get us, at least we would collect the money we need to run the municipality and a few dollars for some capital projects. But anyways, see Drayton's got some notion there.
So I do have one question. I went through the 12 of them, and as Councillor Harrison has said, I guess most of them are, you support them if you choose to. One that I was wondering if we shouldn't have a little dialogue on was the second one, where there specifically was suggested, of course, all of these are just putting it forth a lobby. Whether or not it ever goes anywhere is determined by the government. But the second one, where it specifically said that you would add a 1% sales tax to fund, I don't have it here right in front of me right now, just a second. But I don't know whether we want to have any discussion on that or just let everybody vote that day. And not that we would change our votes, feel compelled anyway, but I think we can get together on some things. That one I wondered about whether you'd ever get consensus. B2 is what I had written on my notes.
I guess I
Please,
always, I'm sorry.
No, you go.
When we read through these, I don't see any that I don't think I would support, but I've done that before, and then once the arguments are made by the presenters and the people that speak for and against it, I've been known to change my mind, so. So, I mean, we can say we have a consensus here, but it doesn't necessarily happen
Right.
in the heat of the moment when somebody says something and that really resonates with you, and you say, nah, I misunderstood the intent of this, I don't like it now, so. But
Yeah,
on the surface, I like all the emotions.
Even sometimes whoever counters can make a difference, absolutely, in what you're thinking. Anyway, that was one that I could see being a bit contentious.
Your worship, the question I would have on that 1% sales tax, and I know it's getting down into the weeds, but how would they determine, and I know that process hasn't even been talked about, but how do they see it being fair and equitable? First come, first serve, cities versus small towns east, small towns west, villages, like it creates a, I'm certainly not against or for a sales tax, but it's the mechanics of how you would distribute that. That would be my biggest question, and maybe it'll come out at the, in the question period at the AUMA.
Okay, so we'll just stay tuned to Vanessa's channel and see when you want us where, and I'm assuming each of us are gonna have the opportunity to vote
Correct, your worship.
if we're
Yep.
registered, so. Okay. I don't think there's a motion required there. Move on to operational services, bylaw 1470, done. RFD, development permit 20D 67 DCD.
Okay, so we're looking to present an application for a development permit within a direct control district. Discovery Wildlife Park has submitted a development permit for the construction of 2 new cabins for nightly rental in the campground area of the park. The park is regulated under the DCD within the land use bylaw. It is created, or within a direct control, council may regulate and control the use, development land in any manner they consider necessary. This direct control district was created to provide site-specific development control to accommodate a zoo and ensure associated compatibility with adjacent land uses. The development authority within this district is council. The LUB provides the following acceptable uses in the district: accessory buildings and uses, campground, dwelling units for the occupancy of owner, operator, or caretaker, environmentally friendly operations, institutional services, parking facilities, zoo, and zoo composting. Development permits have been issued for this property for RV storage, campground, various accessory buildings, including similar cabins, in addition to the primary zoo operation on the site. The proposed cabins will have electrical service, no gas or water, and will be rented to campers in conjunction with the campground. The cabins measure 10 feet by 20 feet and are 15 feet in height. The cabins will be placed within current campground stalls number 5 and 6 along the east side of the campground area backing the rail line. The cabins will be placed a minimum of 50 feet from the east property boundary and does not expand the existing campground area or capacity. No setbacks are specified within the DCD A4 district, but placements of the cabins does not present any concerns to administration. We are recommending that council approve development permit 20D067 for the development of 2 new accessory cabins in the campground area of Discovery Wildlife Park, subject to the conditions listed in the draft development permit in your package.
Anyone prepared to make a motion that we proceed with staff recommended
I move we follow the recommended action and approve this.
Okay, discussion.
Through to Megan, how many cabins total will that be now?
I believe that's 7.
Because I believe the current ones are completely booked, so
Yeah.
it's obviously a service that people are looking for.
Okay, any further discussion? No, I'll ask the question, then all in favor of the motion? Carried. Thanks, Megan. Six point three, an RFD for the sports field user engagement.
Okay, so we're looking to request direction from council to proceed with a needs assessment for outdoor sports fields. That will include user group engagements as an initial phase for a potential full needs assessment for sports fields. In July 2020, council directed administration to assist a local sports field user group in exploring different options for the upgrade of existing facilities to help meet their needs. Options have been identified and some preferred options chosen. However, any changes to the existing sports fields will have impact on other user groups. As such, administration is seeking direction to engage a consultant to assist in engaging user groups, Innisfail minor ball, 590 slow pitch, Innisfail minor football, minor soccer, as well as Chinook's Edge School Division, to determine current needs, wants, and future plans and projections. This may form the initial stage of a sports field needs assessment process that would further evaluate current facilities, supply and demand analysis, benchmarking, and other communities, and an evaluation of our operational model and fees. So at this point, we're looking to engage those various users, discuss how we may be able to accommodate the expanded upgrades that our local baseball group has expressed, while still not detrimentally impacting our other users, and allow us to sort of evaluate that moving forward. So right now, we're just looking for council direction, if you want us to move forward with engaging that consultant to proceed with reaching out to those groups and having focused meetings with each one of those. The approximate cost for the engagement is between $5,000 and $8,000 and would be allocated from the 2020 Parks operating budget.
Is someone prepared to make a motion to support this staff recommendation?
I'd so move, your worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harrison. Discussion?
Yeah, Mayor Romaine, through to Megan. We have as far as I'm concerned, we have a perfectly capable user group that came forward and is willing to do the legwork on such facilities as ball, talking to soccer, et cetera. And I don't think it's necessary to hire a consultant every time we need to make a decision. I think these people can sit down with all the groups, form their own committee, and they're within the community. They know what they feel is best with the community, and then they can bring it forth to administration or council to see what their recommendations are. I'm not in favor of hiring a consultant to do this. I think that they're perfectly capable of doing this themselves.
Okay,
There's just a comment here to that, a comment to Councillor Carrots. Really, it's to buy capacity. We're maxed. Staff are, we're beyond to meet your priorities. We are full. This additional engagement is to help us to buy time for you. If you see this as a priority, this is the best means possible, or we can certainly delay this as a task. So you have some options, is either to delay it down the priority list, or if you want to maintain the high priorities that you have on administration right now, this would be the only logical way to make this, maintain this as a priority. So is it a priority or not a priority to council? That's really the question I would have of you.
Mayor Romaine through to CEO Becker, I do understand the limitations that, limitations isn't the correct term, that administration is tasked at this point. My point is that I don't believe we need a consultant that can do the work of this committee. I think the committee can move forward and bring recommendations the same way any kind of consultant can do, and they live in the community, they know best what they're doing. So whether the committee does it and brings it forth to administration, to me, or a consultant, makes no difference except we're paying for a consultant.
I think the one thing you have to always be concerned about is, certainly there's volunteers and people out there that are qualified, but I think council wants to be assured that it's a neutral, input into this need for facilities, and perhaps somebody might be favoring baseball over soccer, and you get a different response. But, an outside opinion is certainly going to hopefully alleviate that possibility, but.
Yeah, Your Worship, just to add in, it's really we still need administrative oversight. This is an administrative task with that committee and with each of the users. Just, again, the task is not, do you need a professional skill set? It's really to support us to do the work. We don't want to hire more staff. Again, the most logical way then is to give us some time then to maybe into next spring, and then we can start having the discussion. Right now, our workload it's given us a challenge to initiate a process with the groups, and we just to give us a support into gathering the information. That's really it. So we still work with the committee, with all the user groups, but administratively we are tasked.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to CEO Becker. I think what you just said is kind of pertinent when you don't want to hire more staff. So, we think of that word consultant, and as opposed to this is just outsourcing a task because we don't have the capacity in-house to do it. We're not a huge, large organization. So I think looking at the scope of what this analysis will provide, I don't personally see that necessarily being done by these volunteer groups. I mean, they're obviously a very integral part of that process and very important, and I'm sure you've discussed this with them. So I understand when you say that, sometimes we need to outsource some of this to somebody else.
Mayor Romaine through to CEO Becker, I guess that's a question, has the hiring of a consultant has that committee been aware that that's the intention of administration?
We haven't got back to them we were coming for direction from council before we had that next step.
Your Worship?
Yes.
So I guess kind of what I'm also hearing is whether if this is going to take place sooner rather than potentially next spring, the only option is pay for an outsource of a consultant or whoever it may be to take on this task, or we can do the task, months down the road. And I don't know, I personally feel that if we're getting these engagements are probably pretty important to get them done on a timely manner. And I know we've had different presentations come to us that there's a lot of passion within these people that are in the user groups. So I don't want to really, I would like to see it advance. Obviously I know everything comes at a price, but whether it's paying staff now or paying staff then, or consultant, I think the cost is going to be bared either way. So
I guess just to provide my context of what I'm seeing here is when we had that group approach us, I believe it ended with us making a motion that we ask administration to support them. And now what I'm hearing is administration saying they need this resource to provide that support. They're not excluding that group from. Am I reading it right, that this consultant would work in conjunction with that group?
It would likely, to Megan, it'd likely tie into a needs assessments. Right now, tying nicely, right now what's driving this is that relationship that's been developed, but also the pool study and the recreation master planning through Scott Builders on, and plus also the requirement to rebuild diamond number 7. It requires some consideration during budget time.
So tying it all together.
So if we're gonna redo that diamond, what is the highest priority? As we know, minor ball is playing many games, home games out of town, as is the adult slow pitch league, and we don't know the rest of the detail on all the other users, even it's on the football and soccer. So there's a lot of things that's driving this, and to pull all this in together is likely gonna drive into a needs assessment based on where we get, what's our next step on a sports field master plan. This is a first step of several. And again, administratively, I think this is a priority. It's based on what you think is a priority, because there's a lot of things, as I mentioned, that is dominoing into the need for this information.
Yes, Mayor Romaine, I too think it's a high priority. It needs to be done. The user group did come to us. I just don't see what a consultant information can give you versus a committee of people within the community can give you. So I don't see any more work for administration if the committee just does the work themselves.
I think the biggest thing I see is that there's gonna be a lot of challenging conversations between the groups based on what they wanna do and who takes priority over whom, I think is getting, if we can get everybody's wants, needs, ideals, what they think they're gonna need 5 years from now on the table, and allow us to work through, whether it's scheduling changes or different options for different leagues, as opposed to one of the interested parties trying to obtain that objective information from the others might be a
And
bit of a.
I thought I heard that committee ask us for that help. Did I miss something?
To Councillor Bates, yes, they did. We're just asking for some support to advance this as a priority. It's basically, we're buying time. We do have smarts, we do have the intelligence, professional abilities to do this work. We just don't have the time right now. Again, if you want this as a priority, this is the only option, or else we delay this as a priority.
Your worship, through to CEO Becker, I agree it is a priority, and I see this consultant as the facilitator or the facilitation of these groups, because human nature, the guy with the loudest voice, with the biggest chest, usually gets what he wants in these kind of groups, if he's leading, whereas this consultant can put all that aside and bring the groups together and get exactly what everybody sort of needs to have on the table. Like I say, I've been in these groups before, and it's the guy with the biggest voice, and he usually ends up getting what he's getting, so, or what he wants. So I would fully support that $5,000 consultant to go out and bring these groups together.
Okay, any further comments or discussion? Okay, do we have a motion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.4 Utilities Bylaw 1648-2020.
Yep,
Mr.
so I'm here
Kennedy.
in front of you to present the new 1648-2020 Utilities Bylaw. Back on last week, September 8th, administration reviewed the proposed amendments to the 2019 Utility Bylaw with council. From the review, administration is proposing the following recommendations. The flat rate charge for the multi-unit dwelling stay the same and be applied to each unit. The comparison of rates and fees of 9 other municipalities indicated that the town's calculation formula was on par of the average. It is also estimated that the town collects approximately $150,000 in revenue from the base rate applied to the multi-unit residential properties. Second, the amendment There's an amendment to the water meter section in 2 areas. Section 3.20 was revised to include additional clarification on irrigation meters. This would read, the additional meter is installed on a dedicated water service line and directly connected to the water main. For the water meters, Schedule B, utility rates and charges. Item 9 is a new section in regards to the supply of meters that will be charged based on the following flat rates for meters up to 50 millimeter or 2 inches, and over 2 inches will be charged at a cost of the meter. That would then give you, for a 5/8 meter, for instance, a $350 flat rate charge. The amendment to the utility charges and accounts section to include a new stormwater system charge to read as follows. Section 7.4, all customers within the town are subject to a stormwater service charge. Every customer shall pay the utility charge set out in Schedule B. Schedule B, utility rates and charges would be a residential charge of $3 and a non-residential at $6, with a note that multifamily developments with more than 4 units and supplied by a single water meter will be charged the non-residential rate. The public engagement and communication strategy would be to insert, to include an insert into the utility bill that a storm service charge will be added starting January 1st, 2021. As well, we'll be notifying the previous delegation in regards to the multifamily rate. So we are looking for council to approve the 3 readings for the new utility bylaw 1648-2020, as well as council repeals the utility bylaw 1626-2019.
Okay, is someone prepared to move that we give this first reading consideration?
Your worship, I'm prepared to move that we give it first reading and can proceed with discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Bates, discussion.
Your worship, through to Director Kennedy, the stormwater service charge, that'll go into a reserve. Is that the intent of it? Okay, thank you.
Any other further discussion? Okay, I'm going to oppose this proposal because I am not in favor of the stormwater philosophy here, but I feel it's part of the roads and it's not a utility where a resident can have any control of or can regulate them within their own property, but to me it's just part of the road system. But I will be opposing them. That's all.
Mayor Romaine, could you elaborate on that a little bit, please, with your expertise?
Well, I guess storm sewer, I mean, is something that is necessary for the road system to keep the roads drained and the water flowing during the storm runoffs and everything else. And I don't really see the residents are picking up the cost of it through their taxation now, and why we should be hitting them with another charge. Specifically when they've been quite willing to pay for the work through their taxation. And I don't know, I'm just not in favor of another tax.
I agree.
Your worship, so with it being part of the roads, like where does it typically, like if you have a storm sewer issue or some work needed, where would those funds typically come from? Just so, like, to educate myself,
Yeah.
where would the dollars come from, let's say, a significant replacement of, storm sewer being deficient? Where would that money come from?
Through capital projects and through MSI programs such that, you know, that we're doing road rebuilding. I mean, that's, you have to do all the sanitary and the water and the storm sewer and sidewalks and gutter and, you know, those type of things. But now we're singling out that one piece that I don't quite understand, don't quite agree with.
And I guess the only reason, what made sense to me going through these discussions was the fact that if we have it designated and it says right in with what the charge is for, it's not just into the pot, it's specifically for anything that is to do with the stormwater and sewer, or stormwater, sorry. So that's where, I guess, maybe it's a lack of knowledge, but that's where I see if that's what I'm paying for, and I know that's where the dollars are going towards. And there's no budget or there's no reserve built right now, that I think it's responsible, but that's just my opinion.
I'm just not in favor of another form of taxation on our residents. That's-
Just to add clarity though, maintenance on storm is not through capital. It is on a bottom line figure in the operating side.
Right.
So any work that we go and do that is not in a capital plan, and we have labor that goes to it, we have costs that go to repair storm, that is done on the operations side on the bottom line.
Right.
That's
And
the
that-
funds we don't have.
My understanding when we had this discussion was that it was to do with the facilities maintenance, the whole program of studying our infrastructure and keeping it up. And I don't like to pay any more than anybody else, but it's another reserve that is understandable, I think, to the average person. And
Where do you draw the line? I mean, it's sidewalks.
well, it's stormwater as it affects the town. I mean, some of it could run across somebody's lot if it's not controlled. If it's not just a road. And it's not black, I guess, it's not black and white. It's the old, you know, you can take it out of this pocket, or you can take it out of that pocket, but at least we would be accumulating a fund to pay for, and we know we're gonna pay it. And we know we'll never get ahead of it. That's my
Anyways,
understanding.
that's, we're all entitled to our opinion and, but any other discussion yet? Councilor Reber.
Through to Director Kennedy, what percentage of the houses in town would you say are directly connected to a stormwater connection?
That I don't know.
Because I'm guessing probably at least half of the houses in town have a direct connection, so does that, to me then, isn't just part of the road system, or it's, in an older part of town like mine, we're not connected, but the newer parts all are. And to me, $36 a year to support a fund to look after some of that stuff is not unreasonable.
That was gonna be my question, is what is it? What's the dollar figure gonna look like for the average resident, I guess? $36, right?
I guess, Your Worship, to get through to Director Weimark, because and Kennedy, we did discuss this extensively at last year's budget, and maybe you could refresh our minds, because if I recall, it was determined that, you know, we certainly are at an infrastructure deficit, and we know that we're going to be getting less dollars from other levels of government likely, so we need to face that reality.
Through your worship to Councillor Barclay, you're absolutely correct, and this budget's going to be absolutely no different. We need to start recouping. You're going to notice your water rates are not coming anywhere close to replacing your infrastructure. So this was a start to get some of those funds in place to be allocated. So when there is a big storm issue, you looked at the water reserve budget, and that's where you took it from, was from water reserve to compensate that. So all this was to start a reserve to get some allocations to those funds so that we could start working towards getting some infrastructure money there as well for replacement, as well as maintenance, because the storm does have a maintenance. We have quite a few residents in town that their sewer is hooked up to the storm. So we need work done out there for that, and that would do some of that as well. So the storm isn't clear here. It's an older town, and things were hooked up differently way back when. So we have some work to do there, and that was to help that type of thing as well, because there'll have to be some work done to find out which ones those are and to get those fixed.
And in regards to the houses now that are hooked up to the storm system for their, mainly for their surface water and it was before we started building like this. In fact, I'm even been on long enough to remember that when we started doing the sewer storm sewer hookups, it was to alleviate the infiltration into the sanitary system from sump pumps and some people. Prior to that, they were just pumping into their sump pumps into the sanitary. So it was our solution to provide every house with a hookup, so they wouldn't have to put it into. We wouldn't be treating their excess water or whatever, their storm water from their property. But anyways, any other discussion? Then I'll ask the question. Those in favor of the motion? Okay, opposed? Now, can we proceed to second, even though there is one opposed? Okay. I was hoping that was good. Then is someone prepared to give this second reading?
I would so move we give this second reading.
Thank you, Councillor Reberger. Discussion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? And third and final? Or proceed to third and final?
And you need unanimous to go
Yeah.
to third.
I'll proceed to the third reading.
Okay. Now, clarify to me, if I oppose, we can't do third?
Correct.
All right. Then I'll ask the question, all in favor of the motion? Carried. I'm not about to, I'm trying to make a scene here. Would someone like to give this third and final reading? Thank you, Councillor Harrison. No discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, let's move on to correspondence.
Your worship, I think we need to repeal the previous utilities bylaw. We need to repeal. I think we need to repeal that.
There's a second part of that recommended motion.
Yeah. So we've done that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm talking.
It's already, we can, but it's also written in the new bylaw that it's automatically repeals. So
Okay.
And
either
when-
way, it's fine.
I guess when I made the motion, I
Yeah,
assumed I was doing
Okay.
the recommended
No.
action, but
we're good.
Yeah, thank
we're
you.
good,
Yeah,
we're
I
good.
think I was, we've never done it before, but, okay. Yeah. Okay. Got the correspondence up.
There's none within your package, your worship.
Okay. Any discussion on those correspondence?
We don't have any, your worship, today,
I thought I had,
which is unusual.
okay, I'm sorry. Around the table, Mr. Counselor Hill.
Oh, why, thank you. Yeah, no, I don't have too terribly much. There is the Cyclones football team will be having their first home game coming up. I believe it's on this weekend or this Thursday. I think it's this Friday actually. So yeah, it'll be the town, and everyone has been looking after that sports field quite well the last couple weeks. It's really turned it up, so it looks really good. And I know the lines are all painted very nicely, so I'm excited to see that field get put to use. So other than that, that's about all I have to add. And then I believe, yeah, that's actually all. Sorry.
Yes, since the A&P meeting that we've covered roundtable, really the only thing I'd done was attend the 13 Ways. An awful lot to digest, and I look forward to seeing us discussing that and starting to set some priorities. This week, I guess I was off, but I'm back on for the Ally discussion that's this evening. And the MUG group is getting together for the first time since COVID. And that's pretty key because COVID caught them at the end of a project and really trying to define what they were doing going forward and what's their purpose in life. So this Thursday they will have a meeting in Drumheller and I'll be going down to it. I'm not sure if I'll be carpooling as usual. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I too attended the 13 Ways workshop. I have MPC coming up tomorrow and PRL this week. And I'd just like to ask the question, if it's part of Robert's rules, that if we can make a motion of something that isn't on the agenda, is that, I know we had that discussion before when motions had come up, but does it have to be on the agenda, or is that, can anybody answer that for me? Or can you just randomly put forth a motion on any subject? Mike, I'll tell you my concern is that if somebody just happens to bring up something and that you happen to miss that particular meeting, but maybe you would have zoomed in, like it just gives it certain relevance to priority, I guess, if we can just randomly bring up any motion at any particular time. Does that make sense?
It really depends, Counselor, so you have your agenda, you also have notices of motion, but depending on council's conversation and dialogue, it may incur another action that council may deem appropriate. It's really up to council. Yeah, and if it's determined urgent, as per your procedure bylaw. So it depends.
I would say if it was in regards or in reference to something that you're discussing, or a topic that's, you want to make a motion on that specific discussion, if council's willing to accept it, I suppose.
It's up to council.
But you're not gonna start, new topics. Oh, by the way. I want to make a motion to.
But I guess to answer the question, it's not in Robert's rules that you can't do that. It's at the discretion of the council of the day.
So it's procedure bylaw is what you follow. There's some
Procedure.
flavors of Robert's rules, but it's a procedure bylaw that gives you the guidance how you set motions.
Anything you want to discuss? So on September 10th, went to the Red Deer Emergency Center tour, dispatch center. Yeah, and I don't know, there was some discussion that came up, and maybe Councillor Carrot would fill us in on this, but I think the emergency services is being moved out of that center, or what's that? AHS, yeah, it's being moved out, and that kind of impacting local ambulance service, et cetera. And I think Red Deer is advocating very hard to keep it there for all sorts of reasons. Familiarity of the area is one major part of it, so I'm not sure if that's something that we want to take a look at supporting. I think ours is out of Calgary now, isn't it, Glenn, where Councillor Carrot? Then our HS is dispatched out of Calgary Centre?
Ours in Innisfail,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Out of South Region, yeah.
So whether we want to support Red Deer and the surrounding area in that matter, but just to bring that to people's attention. Also on the 11th, 10 at 13 Ways, the half day, that was a great morning. And then this evening, can't go for the whole time, but part of the time we'll participate in the Welcoming and Exclusive Communities Being an Ally workshop. And just on another note, on the weekend, I was up with the doggo at the dog park, and there was a gentleman walking around, and he was actually from Calgary. And 5 families that come into Innisfail after camping out west at the Bracinas campground. And he was complimenting Innisfail on the park and the dog park and everything, and how great it looked, and had moved from Toronto to Calgary, and I don't know, almost seemed like he was maybe toying about maybe a smaller community would be in the future and stuff, but he was very impressed, and the family had stopped at Discovery Wildlife Park, so he'd hit Google to find an off-leash park for the dog, so he was up there. So it's kind of interesting when you run into somebody like that and have a nice chat with him and kind of see his perception of what's going on around here. So congrats to the town staff for keeping everything looking so great.
Yeah, sorry, if I just want to add on to that, that I went to dispatch as well, and I hope everybody that went found it beneficial, because I think it's really good to see. Just further to that, yeah, Red Deer's going to lose its EMS dispatch to Calgary, and it's obviously a cost savings. They still will do fire, and they're not going to lose any jobs or anything, but the continuity could be disrupted. But I think it was a very good tour.
So I also took in that dispatch tour, and you can see the synergies of having them all in one room. It does kind of make sense, but it was a very interesting tour, and I'm glad I went. I also attended the 13 Ways right after this council meeting. If we can get this done pretty quickly, I'm going to go donate blood and try and make it to see if I can be a candidate to be an ally tonight. And tomorrow I have community services panel meeting, and Wednesday the skateboard sponsorship thing while everybody else is golfing. I'll be there, so I got this one for you.
You want to borrow my skateboard?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also attended the 13 Ways workshop last Friday. I see we have a number of education sessions through the AUMA beginning on Wednesday, so I'll be sitting in or zooming in from home. I'm also going to attend the skateboard park opening on Wednesday. I won't be golfing, and I'll be going to the community inclusive welcoming tonight to learn how that I can be a more positive ally.
Okay, well, I haven't quite enjoyed the last session with Doug and Heather. They've certainly brought me on a little more positively now and what direction we're into, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting, very exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. I couldn't make the tour to Red Deer, unfortunately, but anyways, I had one, thing, and I think I'm gonna leave it till after council, because Mr. Heisted's here, I wanted him to see it too. So, anyways, I think that's everything. If we want to quickly go around the room, Stephen, do you have anything?
No, pretty much all our capital's done, all our capital projects, we finished Fifth 38.
Yeah.
Quite successfully now. 50th Street landscaping, that's pretty much wrapped up. We have some more signage to do, but the paint lines are all up. Yeah, so that pretty much wraps our capital up for the year.
Good. Going around. Stuart, do you have anything? No? Jason, you got something? Yeah?
Oh, I'm on YouTube. All right, so. Really? Oh, really? Hey. No, I want to thank council for the work, just volunteering your time to welcoming communities. We have our next session is being an ally, and I just think it's gone really well. And I just want to thank the mayor for you guys sticking in there. I think I know this is the third session and they've gotten a little lengthy, but I think there's a lot of positive work. Also want to talk or mention the 13 ways that you guys are doing. I'm actually really excited that you guys are doing it. I know when I was on council, I've mentioned it a few times. Jim and I were, we were sparring partners at one time. But I think it's really good for the community, and I just want to say thanks again. And as to the administration, the work that your team is doing here, Todd, it's great. Like the skateboard park is awesome. I can't believe the number of kids there, so it's really positive. So, and Mr. Carrot, you're always welcome to come to the welcoming communities as well. So, I think as to everybody else, yeah. So I want to just thank once again, and thank you, YouTube, for allowing me this opportunity.
Megan, you got anything else?
Just that, yes, there will be MPC tomorrow, and we'll get an agenda out as promptly as this is over, so everyone can have a look at that.
Todd, you got anything else? No? Okay, upcoming events. You've had a chance to look at those. Other than that, I guess we could warrant a motion to move in camera.
Your worship, I'll move that we move in camera.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Let's take a couple-minute break. I wanted to show Mr. Heisted something.
Go get in line in the washroom here. It's like the Saddle Dome.
Yeah, better off